Al Capone was one of the most infamous gangsters in American history, a name that became synonymous with organized crime, violence, and corruption. He built a criminal empire so powerful that even law enforcement struggled to stop him. His story is one of power, crime, and ultimately downfall. Alphonse Gabriel Capone was born on January 17, 1899, in Brooklyn, New York, to Italian immigrant parents. His family was hardworking but poor, and like many immigrant families in the early 1900s, they struggled to make a living. Capone grew up in a tough neighborhood where gangs and street violence were a part of everyday life. As a young boy, he was intelligent but easily angered. At the age of 14, he got into an argument with a teacher and punched him in the face. That moment changed the course of his life. He dropped out of school and turned to the streets, where he quickly became involved in petty crimes like theft and assault. One of Capone's early mentors was Johnny Torrio, a well-known gangster who saw potential in the young boy. Torrio taught him the ways of organized crime and introduced him to the underworld. Capone started working small jobs for local gangs, running errands and doing dirty work. But he was ambitious, and he wanted more. One of the most famous things about Al Capone was his scar. While working as a bouncer in a nightclub, Capone made a disrespectful comment about a woman. Unfortunately for him, the woman's brother was a gangster named Frank Gallucio. Gallucio attacked Capone with a knife, slashing his face and leaving him with 3 deep scars. From that day on, he was known as Scarface. Capone hated the nickname and tried to hide his scars by tilting his head in photographs. But ironically, it became a part of his legend. Capone's real rise to power began when Johnny Torrio invited him to Chicago. At the time, Chicago was a city filled with crime, corruption, and gang wars. Torrio was running a massive criminal operation, and he needed someone he could trust. Capone became his right-hand man. When Prohibition started in 1920, alcohol became illegal in the United States. But instead of stopping people from drinking, it created a massive opportunity for criminals. Capone and Torrio began smuggling alcohol, running underground bars called speakeasies, and bribing police officers to look the other way. Soon, their business was making millions of dollars. They controlled breweries, distribution routes, and hundreds of bars. Anyone who refused to work with them was eliminated. In 1925, Johnny Torrio was nearly killed in an assassination attempt by a rival gang. He decided to retire and handed control of the entire empire to Al Capone. At just 26 years old, Capone became the most powerful gangster in Chicago. Unlike other crime bosses, Capone didn't hide in the shadows. He loved the spotlight and lived a flashy lifestyle. He wore expensive suits, drove luxury cars, and stayed in the best hotels. He even attended public events, acting as if he were a respectable businessman. But behind the scenes, he was running one of the most violent criminal organizations in America. Capone had thousands of men working for him, running illegal alcohol, gambling operations, and prostitution rings. He bribed politicians, police officers, and judges. He made sure that no one could touch him. However, his rise to power also brought enemies. Rival gangs, especially the North Side Gang led by Bugs Moran, wanted to take him down. The streets of Chicago turned into a war zone, with constant shootouts and assassinations. The most infamous crime linked to Capone was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre on February 14, 1929. Bugs Moran was his biggest rival, and Capone wanted him dead. He planned a brutal attack to take out Moran's men. On that day, a group of Capone's men dressed as police officers raided a garage where Moran's gang was meeting. Thinking it was a police raid, the gang members lined up against the wall. Suddenly, Capone's men pulled out Tommy guns and opened fire. 70 bullets were fired, and 7 men were brutally killed. It was one of the bloodiest crimes in American history. Although Capone was never officially linked to the massacre, everyone knew it was his doing. The event shocked the country and made the public turn against him. Despite his crimes, Capone remained untouchable for years. He continued running his empire, and no one could gather enough evidence to arrest him. His money and power kept him safe, but the government was determined to bring him down. FBI agent Elliot Ness formed a special team known as the Untouchables to go after Capone. They focused on gathering evidence and shutting down his operations. However, in the end, Capone wasn't arrested for murder, bootlegging, or bribery. Instead, he was taken down by something unexpected: tax evasion. The government discovered that Capone had earned millions of dollars, but never paid taxes. In 1931, he was charged with tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years in prison. At first, he was sent to a regular prison, but he continued running his empire from behind bars. So, the government moved him to Alcatraz, the most secure prison in America. At Alcatraz, Capone was completely cut off from his criminal empire. His health started to decline due to syphilis, a disease he had been carrying for years. By the time he was released in 1939, he was no longer the powerful gangster he once was. After prison, Capone retired to his mansion in Florida. His mind had deteriorated, and he was no longer the feared crime boss of Chicago. He spent his last years suffering from dementia and other health issues. On January 25, 1947, Al Capone died at the age of 48. The man who once ruled Chicago with fear and violence was gone. Even after his death, Al Capone remains one of the most famous gangsters in history. His story has inspired countless movies, books, and TV shows. Some see him as a ruthless criminal, while others view him as a symbol of power and rebellion. But in the end, his story proves one thing: crime might bring wealth and power, but it never lasts. No matter how powerful you are, the law will eventually catch up. This was the story of Al Capone. Let us know in the comments what you think about his legacy. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more crime stories.